As if Fridays couldn't get any better when you get to the end of that week in July, middle of the month. You only have a couple Fridays to go till the start of training camp.
Yeah.
And the mailbag is bursting at the seams. Folks, it hardly gets any better than that. Welcome to The Beat, presented by the Waterworks. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. And I can tell, I said it last week, and I'll double down. The anticipation is soaring.
Yeah, the stock up.
Stock up on excitement.
The verbosity of the verbosity, the verbosiveness. What's the word?
You say it however you want.
I think it's verbosity. I'm going to go with verbosity. These are some of the
There are no rules on a Freaky Friday.
These are some of the most verbose questions we've had. Very robust in length and even thought.
Yeah.
So really excited about a chance to break down some of the things that are on people's mind. A lot of stuff that I think is kind of, just in the ether. It's not really like specific things. Like, what about this? Is this a possibility? Is this a world we can live in?
In a world.
And I think that we should be living in all these worlds. So let's live in the worlds and get ready. We are passing the threshold. We are 1 week away from going to Chicago, essentially 10 days.
10 days.
From going to Chicago for Big Ten Media Days. Excited for that. And to see what Tony Petitti says. You saw earlier this week, the ACC said their entire league is on board with the 24-team playoffs. So it seems like old Tony Petitti is pulling some strings, winning some hearts and minds over in the Atlantic Coast country. Now, which makes perfect sense because that league needs as much help as they can get teams in the playoff. But
they'd probably support anything.
Yeah, they'd be like, we'll take 64.
Yeah.
Get 7 or it was 64. The ACC might get 3 teams in.
They have a decent shot at it.
Yeah, not bad. But yeah, it's exciting. You can feel people getting excited for football to come back, and August is right around the corner, and then in the blink of an eye, it's September.
There were also more than a few of you who sent in some condolences to the Ward family, and I appreciate that as well. It's very cool and humbling and gratifying how many of you are writing in and thankful for what we do and appreciate our work and what we do in our personal lives as well. So, getting that in there, having people write "in a world" in all bold and italic letters tells me that there are still a number of you who like watching the Austin and Birm Show, and we sincerely thank you for that. So without further ado,
before we dive in,
okay,
since we're having this conversation with America right now,
and that one guy in France,
I think it's an important time of the year to say, hey, what do you want us to do different this season? Do you have content ideas? Do you have things that you'd like to see us approach differently? Let us know, the Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com, because we can't
read your mind.
Can't read your mind, and you make us better.
That's well said. And Juwan wants us to get better to start this show by asking, well, first of all, and flattery will get you everywhere, America and France. Great show. Appreciate all the info and perspective. Well, thank you, Juwan. Who will be the possible first-round picks in the 2027 and 2028 NFL draft besides Jeremiah Smith and possibly Julian Sayin?
27 and 28?
He says 27 and 28.
Well, that expands things quite a bit.
Sure does.
I'm already on record as saying I think that Jalen McClain is going to work his way into being a late first-round pick next season. So I think I should be consistent there.
That's for the 2027 draft.
That's for the 2027 draft. I think that there is a world where Edric Houston, because of just his sheer physicality, his size, his speed, his personality, his all of the things, except for thus far productivity, line up for him to be in that discussion. He was a 5-star recruit. Here's a funny little thing about recruiting rankings. It's very rare that 5-star recruits get ranked 5-star recruits incorrectly.
Yeah.
It is very rare. So
everyone always says, well, you can be a 3-star and become a first-round pick. And that is correct.
100% correct.
But the hit rate on the 5 stars seems pretty high. I don't have the number in front of me. I didn't look it up.
It's pretty high. And beyond that, I mean, I'm
2028 is included, so Devin Sanchez.
2028, Devin Sanchez is certainly in the conversation. He's going to have one of those guys that's just going to have all of the skill sets and tools and check marks that people are going to look for in the NFL draft. I think, and it might sound crazy considering we haven't seen him play a snap at Ohio State yet, I think that Dominic Kelly is a guy that, based on what he did in year one at Georgia, based on his frame, based on the way that Ohio State viewed him in the transfer portal. I think that he's a guy that has an opportunity over the next 2 years to work himself into that discussion. And then there's always guys that just pop up out of nowhere and surprise you.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about the next 2 draft cycles, but if we're going to focus primarily on 2027, one of the 3 offensive linemen of Austin Sareveld, Carson Hinsman, or Luke Montgomery will be a first-round pick.
Ooh, there's a little spice on that pepper. I can only speak for what I know, and I know that the draft grades for Luke last year were 3rd, 4th round.
Yep.
I think from an athletic profile,
and Carson was in the same boat, which is why he returned.
From an athletic profile, Luke is probably the most likely of that group. But he is also the least versatile of that group, or has at least shown the least versatility of that group thus far, which I think makes for an interesting.
They haven't had to move him.
That's right. But they have had the ability to showcase the versatility for Carson and for Austin over these last couple of years at different points.
Sure. And maybe again for Austin this year.
So, boy, oh boy. That is a spicy pepper right there. I'm not gonna co-sign that one at this juncture.
It's a Freaky Friday and it's a bold P. Like I'm not afraid. It's that time of year.
But other than that, there's not a lot of guys that you look at on this roster who have played enough to really beyond the Devin Sanchez. So you got guys going into their 2nd or 3rd year right now that have played a lot and have the athletic traits that the NFL really covets. And so, I think if we extrapolate that beyond, I've already last week on Twitter, I said it, and I've said it on the Letterman Monroe message boards. I think that Sincere Johnson will be the highest ranked or highest drafted player in the Ohio State current.
That's 2029. In the current,
so
we weren't asked about that.
So let me, okay, if we're going to get BP'd here, if we're going to be a P, give me Riley Pettijohn in that 28 class, because I think when you talk about just pure freaky athleticism, Riley's going to be in that mix. Now, the question with him is, how is the development going to get there? Does he want it bad enough? Is he going to be able to be consistent enough? If he turns it on, like he has Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles level traits,
sure,
that will make him a first-round pick. I still will stand by my BP that Sincere Johnson will be the highest ranked linebacker in this current room, or highest drafted. But I think Riley in that 28 year is going to be in that conversation. Hell, Tavian St. Clair.
Hey, watch your language, pal.
My apologies to the Hilltoppers. Tavian St. Clair has the opportunity, if he's able to, similarly to Riley, if he's able to turn it on and get dialed in mentally and figure out the nuances of football and not just rely on the athleticism that he was able to get by on in high school, I think Tavian's in that conversation. So
in this boldest of P's, you are suggesting he starts for 1 year and then as a first-round draft pick in 2028?
I think that's feasible.
Okay. I'm just checking.
The size, the arm strength, the mobility, the everything else we talked about on the Wednesday show when we did the quarterback preview. He has every tool that you want. Mm-hmm. So now he's got to learn how to play football.
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan. They drafted Akili Smith. And I'm going to tell you, I think that Tavian's long-term upside is probably a little higher than that.
Huh. Really on a limb there. As a reminder, or if you haven't heard this before, Bold Predictions will move to a Friday afternoon show, whether that is at the Horseshoe or at a visiting stadium. We want to make sure that the mailbag remains on Freaky Fridays in the morning on the beat. So
I like that.
That's just a heads up.
Are we still going to do the pregame keys?
Why wouldn't
I don't know. We're just talking about our editorial calendar right now, but I just wondering. I'm going back to the start of the show. I want to know what people like.
Yeah.
Do people want the pregame keys? Should we do that? Should Friday mornings?
We're breaking the news about the availability report on Saturday morning.
True. Okay.
It's pretty important.
All right. I guess I understand that.
So no, it's not going anywhere.
Well, all right.
And it's not going to help you. Like, you don't get to show up to the stadium any later. We have to be there at the same time.
Shoot.
Boy, we've really gone off track.
Welcome to Friday.
This is from Ryan. Coming into last year, Matt Patricia's defensive reputation in the NFL was a more conservative bend but don't break style, but also that he likes to change up his looks both in the fronts and on the back end. That carried over into his first season at Ohio State. It's been well talked about what Arthur Smith's offensive style is from the NFL. But you guys have also talked many times that you think this could go back to the 2018 Dwayne Haskins style offense. Those two styles directly contradict each other. So if you had to bet, which offense do you actually think we'll see more of this fall? Ohio State battled with lacking an offensive identity for most of the last 2 seasons, and the fear is that we could be walking into that trap again. I don't know that they battled a lack of offensive identity 2 years ago. I think it was almost the archetype of what Ryan Day wants. He had 2 running backs that they could trust, have a power rushing attack. They knew that they could get yards when they needed to from their quarterback. They had the
first-round picks at wide receiver.
Pro-style passing attack that was able to generate big plays. I would say, did they consistently execute to the level that you expect? I mean, against Nebraska, no. Certainly in the loss in the game to Michigan, absolutely not. And maybe I'm misremembering, maybe I'm mischaracterizing. I didn't think it was out of a lack of consistent identity. And in fact, the Michigan loss, I think that they should have tried something else other than leaving Will Howard out there in a state of disrepair
confusion
mentally. So now last year, I do think I would agree with that, and it did come down to lack of identity, lack of consistent approach in red zone and short yardage scenarios. Mm-hmm. And we talked about that earlier this week and last week and maybe 15 times already this year, that to me that became a much more glaring issue than tempo, no huddle, snapping the ball earlier, number of snaps, all those things that we've talked about plenty of times. That's where I'm at on that. But I do think that, putting Matt Patricia as the head coach of the defense and now giving a former NFL head coach in Arthur Smith a chance to solely run the offense, and probably not without a ton of meddling from Ryan Day. Now we'll have to see if that actually bears itself out during the course of the year. That lends itself towards finding an identity that works together. And one thing that you and I have both seen and taken notice of are the number of times, whether that's on the practice field, in summer recruiting camps, Arthur Smith and Matt Patricia talking to each other, a good relationship between the two of them. And I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't complement what each other wants to do.
Yeah, and there's a few things in play here. Number one, and Ryan Day will say it, Arthur Smith will say it, every other offensive coordinator who's been through here in the last couple of years will say it. This is still Ryan Day's offense.
Yeah.
It's not Arthur Smith's offense. Number two, something I mentioned on Thursday's position preview, talking about wide receivers, in a conversation I had with Arthur Smith back in the spring where he said, I can do anything I want with this offense. That's not the way it was in the NFL. Okay, he got to take over the Atlanta Falcons. He had Desmond Ridder as his quarterback. He had
Could you not run whatever you wanted with Desmond Ridder?
I don't think so. He was limited because the NFL has limits on rosters and constructions and how many dudes you have. I think that you will see Ohio State, and this is what good coaches do, you change your scheme to fit your players. You do not force players to fit your scheme. I believe that Arthur Smith, from a quarterback standpoint, and through his communication and conversation with Ryan Day and Julian Sayin, understands what is the best thing for Julian Sayin to do in this offense. Now, that said, if you get an improved Bo Jackson, if you get an improved Isaiah West, if you get the contribution from Jacoby Jackson that we think, if you get the home run hitting ability of Legend Bay, there are ways you can have an offensive identity that will look similar to last year, or as we talked about, the other day, there's maybe a blend of the 24 offense and the 2018 offense coming, because the Buckeyes, while certainly not believing at this point that Bo and Isaiah are Quinshon and Travion level backs, there's a lot of excitement about that duo. And then you add in Jacoby and Legend. I think that they feel like they can do a lot of different things. When I talk about what I think this offense is going to be most likely suited for, it is how do you take advantage of these 6 wide receivers and Julian Sayin and the most experienced offensive line in the country. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Ohio State is going to go out there and intentionally slow itself down. Now, not slow itself down from a pace standpoint, because as Ryan Day said in the spring, you're allowed to score on run plays. It is legal. You're allowed to do that. So they're hoping for home runs. They're hoping for a faster get the ball out of Julian's hands faster, more explosive plays. But fundamentally, I don't think you're going to see, just because Arthur Smith is there, you're not going to see a bunch of 14 personnel all the time. Ohio State has loved the 12 and 13. That's not going to really probably change. But I think the goal is you've got all these different types of weapons. How do you get them the ball and find explosive plays? And whatever that looks like, I don't know. Maybe it's not the 2018 offense. Maybe it's not the 24 offense where you're rotating Quinshawn and Travion and you're mixing in. But you also had, again, Carnell Tate, Emeka Ibuka, Jeremiah Smith. Those are pretty good players. And the Buckeyes found a way to get all of them the ball. So I think that is still the goal.
And when we talk about 2018 or 2019, it's more about the passing attack and the passing concepts for me.
Right. It's the concepts and not necessarily the usage.
Than the tempo, or even because one thing that we're never going to see again, I firmly believe this is not a bold prediction, is an Ohio State quarterback throw it 73 times in a game.
Or an Ohio State running back like J.K. Dobbins rush for 2,000 plus yards like he did in 2019. The Buckeyes will seemingly be gearing up for this running back, not by committee necessarily. This year, maybe a little bit more by committee, but I don't think you're ever going to be looking at this is the only running back who's touching the ball in every situation.
Well, you do need two running backs who can get you 2,000 yards.
Right. So however you get there, but doing it with one back, that's one of the funny things about all the discourse around Ryan Day's offenses. Like, there's only been one 2,000-yard rusher in the history of Ohio State football, and it happened with Ryan Day, who's the pass-happy quarterback coach.
Not Woody Hayes.
So it is a sign to me that when you have the right players, the Buckeyes will be willing to do whatever it takes to play the style that is going to get those players in the most advantageous position.
I mean, the styles will change and the seasons will change, but comfort, it doesn't. Call the Waterworks and Hetter Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing for maintenance, installation, and repairs, or visit online at thewaterworks.com. The Waterworks and Hetter Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, they are proud sponsors of Ohio State athletics. Thank you to Ryan for that question. This came from Aaron. Hearing Jalen McClain talk about Jay Timmons and Christian Allegro is exciting to hear about possibilities there in the back seven. That, of course, Jalen McClain conversation was with myself and Television's Adam King on Talking Tuesday. If you missed that episode of The Beat, that's where you can find it. Jalen McClain, really interesting and personality, great player. We know that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in the Chicago spotlight in a couple of weeks. But I digress. Is there a world where we just see Matt Patricia calling out line changes like they do in hockey? Group A, Matthews and Sanchez at corner with Pearson Allegro at linebacker. Kelly and Timmons out there with Riley Pettijohn and TJ Offord in Group B. Sounds like Jalen McClain is always going to be on the field with a mix of Earl Little, Leroy Roker, Terry Moore, other safety slot positions. Will be fun to watch Matt Patricia scheme everything up this year. Line changes, probably not, but you referenced it on a number of occasions. Bobby Carpenter talked about it with us earlier in the week. This is a defense that you're looking about 16, 17, maybe even more guys contributing on a regular basis. Yeah. So, I do think there will be a potential for specialized roles. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's more expansive for Christian Allegro than we thought in March or April. It seems like we saw him making plays in coverage. We know that he can stand up and rush the passer. It very much feels like the OTA performances from Christian Allegro are moving the needle for the coaching staff and his teammates, that they're noticing that. And if that gets them in a position where somebody's playing 20 snaps one week and 50 the next, it could sort of be like a line change, but that's going to be personnel and scheme dependent and opponent specific. So I think that we're probably going to have to, we're not going to see the static alignment that we saw certainly from Jim Knowles, even to some extent a year ago with Matt Patricia.
But last year's static alignment made perfect sense.
Again, for first-round draft picks.
You don't take those guys off the field, and so there's no reason. This year, you don't go into the season with that much built in, ready to go. These guys are first-round picks. They can't come off. I think the schedule plays into it a little bit this year. You're going to need to rotate more. Yep. You're going to have better offenses you're playing against. You're going to need to be able to prepare schemes differently. Last year, I think there was a lot of times throughout the season, throughout the regular season especially, because the Buckeyes were pretty basic. I mean, not to go back to 2016 when the Buckeyes got pissed at being called a basic defense, but last year was pretty basic. And
how'd that work out for the Sooners?
Poorly. It worked out well for Ohio State, but this year, you are going to have to mix things up. You are playing against some of the best offensive minds in the country. You are playing against a handful of the quarterbacks who are the best in the country. You are going to be put in a position where every week you're going to need someone else to do something different. So line shifts, no. Line changes, no. Mixing and matching, do I think that there's opportunities to get TJ Alford and Riley Pettijohn out there at the same time or with Peyton Pierce? Or I think there's alignments where you might see Christian Allegro, Riley Pettijohn, Peyton Pierce, and TJ Alford at the same time. I think there's opportunities to see Jay Timmons on the field at the same time as Jermaine Matthews and Devin Sanchez and Dominic Kelly and Jalen McClain and Earl Little. Like, I think there's a lot of things you can do. I've talked in the past, like the last couple of weeks, if you think about the opportunity to put Edric Houston, James Smith, and John Walker out there at the same time while still having Quay Rasaw and Christian Allegro on the field at the same time, you can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Matt Patricia is going to be challenged this year in a way that I don't think he really felt like he was last year, because he had elite pieces, and the offenses Ohio State played, if you give someone in that building truth serum, they'll probably be like, we got
LDRD?
We got away with playing some pretty milquetoast offenses a year ago. I don't think that's going to be the case this year.
To be fair to Aaron, after the line change thing, he did write LOL. So I don't think he was. It was more the spirit of the question, which I definitely
totally
understand.
get it. Yeah, I mean, you are talking about. I mean, let's just do the numbers. How many guys do you really think are going to play? How many defensive ends are going to play and play consistently?
Kenyatta Jackson, Bo Atkinson, Quay Rasaw, some combination of Zion and Epi. I don't know.
So 4.5.
Let's say 4.5.
And then how many defensive tackles?
I believe 4 will be regularly in the rotation.
4, potentially 5 if you add Will Smith.
It depends on what happens.
Beyond Will, who's
if Jameer Perez has a specialized role.
Linebackers, we expect 4, right? So that's now we're at 12 guys that we expect to regularly rotate in. Then you have 4 safeties that you expect to regularly rotate in. That's 16 guys. If you have 4 corners, or even if it's 3, even if it's just Devin Sanchez and Jermaine Matthews, and then only Jay Timmons in the slot, and you don't even give Dominic Kelly consistent reps, which seems unlikely.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
So then you're talking 19 to 20 players on this defense who are going to be regularly in the mix, and that's unusual.
And I think that would be counting in the lighter games, although there are not a ton of them. I still don't think when you get into talent equated hardware matchup games that you're likely to be playing all 4 or 5 of those defensive ends. At some point, you're going to notice a separation.
You hope.
But that's the plan.
But that's the reason you play that many guys, is to eventually find the separation.
When you get into the big games, you need when Ohio State needs them the most, they need to give them the best. And the best players need to be on the field.
Wow, that's pretty deep.
It's profound. Did you just think of that? Yeah, just right now.
Nice.
I'm going to trademark that. But thanks for the question. As always, Aaron, listener from Connecticut. That's almost to France.
It's a quarter of the way there. It's at least a third of the way there.
It's a third of the way. I recall that when Ryan Day evaluates his coaches and what he looks for in a new coach, he says the ability to recruit is the key trait that he looks for, among other qualities. With NIL, how do you now evaluate a coach's ability to recruit? Using Carlos Lachlan as an example, you guys have stated he has a tremendous relationship with David Gabriel George. So if he goes to Tennessee because of money, how do you judge Lachlan, or any coach for that matter? That's Max in Connecticut. It's a wonderful question.
It's a question that I have pondered multiple times in this new era of college sports, because the simple truth is, and we saw this with Larry Johnson in the last few cycles specifically, and people can have their comments or thoughts about Larry Johnson and if the game had passed him by or any of that stuff. Larry Johnson, when he finds his guys, is as elite as anybody in the country when it comes to relationship building. We've said it 1,000 times, especially the guys once they're in the program. Beyond that, James Laurinaitis has shown an ability to really hone in on his guys and get them to take less money to come to Ohio State. That is a rarity. So how do you really measure someone when the real crux now is, how do we get a prospect and their family to the 1 yard line? Which seems silly, because there are plenty of times when you're getting them to the 1 yard line, and the David Gabriel George recruitment is one that is at the 1 yard line right now. If you don't punch it in, how do you blame Carlos Loughlin? You can't. So, and I think Ryan Day and Mark Pantoni and the personnel staff have to come up with a different way to measure that. And, that's why, and I don't think it's a coincidence that now that we're in the NIL era, you've seen Ryan Day pivot away from hiring coaches based almost exclusively on recruiting pedigree. The Jim Knowles hire, not really demanding that Patricia or Arthur Smith do a lot of recruiting stuff, because the Buckeyes are smart enough to realize that isn't quite as big a deal. The brand now is selling itself in a way that it doesn't really matter what those coaches. Keenan Bailey is another example. He does a great job, a tremendous job building relationships with his guys. Yeah. But he's coaching a position Ohio State is just not going to pay for. So he's recruiting almost for the rebound. There's these weird nuances now that just were not a part of this before for assistant coaches.
Well, I think what you're building up to there is that the transfer portal becomes a part of their, evaluation skills, relationship building a second time around. If you don't get them up front, that becomes just as important. And so it is a more all-encompassing evaluation than it was if just what does this class look like and how many stars are in it. So my answer to that now currently is, well, what does the room look like now?
Yeah.
How much depth is in it? How much playable depth is in it? How many high-end talents are you sending to the next level? How do you develop? I mean, I know that the question is about recruiting, but
that's how you have to judge it.
You have to. I don't think,
because it's a comprehensive look.
I don't think you can judge it on National Signing Day, and I know that sounds a little bit like a cop out, but if all the other process is good for Carlos Loughlin here, and you don't win those recruitments, okay, well, what sort of plan B and plan C do you have to make sure? Because Ohio State will not compromise the success and the standard of that position. Yeah. So if you don't win that recruitment, and you will not, no recruiter is ever going to win every single one. Even Brian Hartline has lost a couple wide receivers that he thought he was going to land. No one is infallible when it comes to the recruiting process, especially in the NIL era. But all of that is to say, if Ohio State doesn't get David Gabriel George, what does Carlos Loughlin do with the next option? Is because he will have 5 months to either sign another running back or two running backs, or a full season to evaluate who's in the transfer portal and continue to, make those contacts, or, tampering is apparently going to be legal now. So
everything's legal.
Talk to whoever you want, or prepare for December and January to make sure that by the time you get to 2027, that the state of that room is in a spot that the Buckeyes can count on a running back and a power rushing attack that they don't compromise on at any point. So I think you have to remove yourself from purely thinking about high school relationships and National Signing Day in December and expand it into the transfer portal, and then think about, all right, well, what combination of players gives you the quality of a room that is required to compete for a championship?
There are a couple examples of coaches that come to mind who have shown that their ability to build a relationship and maintain it even when the player doesn't choose Ohio State. Larry Johnson is certainly one who's done that multiple times, guys who have come back. Yeah. And it will probably draw the ire of some folks, but Tony Alford in now at Michigan. Tony Alford is a really, really elite relationship builder when it came to high school recruiting. He got beat at the end on a couple different recruitments, Jordan Lyle, Mark Fletcher, Justice Haynes, but he went to
Trey Sermon.
He goes to Michigan, and Justice Haynes comes back. Taylor Tatum, running back from Oklahoma, who he tried to recruit to Ohio State, transferred up to Michigan to play for Tony Alford. So, it's. I think that the definition remains somewhat the same. I just think the term of how long you have to define that success has expanded.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Good question. Thanks for sending that in, Max. Last one came from Tyler. Is Austin going to make a pit stop after Big Ten Media Days up to Minneapolis for SummerSlam, since we weren't able to go to WrestleMania this year due to the Buckeyes making the spring game on night one? How dare they? And part two, if Birm could make his ultimate 2027 recruiting class, if money was not an object, and if money is not an object and he can just stockpile his favorites at each position, what would the class look like? I do believe, Tyler, that we will take liberty up there for 2 nights of SummerSlam on that last weekend before training camp. Got enough Marriott points to maybe make that happen, and
But we're not going straight from Chicago.
No, we're coming
because I ain't going.
No, we're gonna fly to Minneapolis for that.
I ain't going.
You love wrestling. This is the worst.
No, if I have to go to Minneapolis, this is the time of year I'd like to go, but I have now not much real desire to go to Minneapolis.
Yeah, well, it's going to be great because Cody's going to win the belt back.
Neat.
Your dream fantasy booking of the signing class.
I did actually read this question in advance, and I wanted to put some thoroughness into the thought process. I have created a 24-man recruiting class, which I think is a fair number for Ohio State, and it would be this. So get ready, recruiting nerds, because this is
Did you kick anybody out of the current class? I think that's what I'm most interested in.
So here's what I would have done. At quarterback, I would have Champ Mons, who reclassified and from the 28 class and into the 27 class, he's committed to Notre Dame. I'd take David Gabriel George, of course, Jameer Brown, Benny Easter, the Texas Tech commit, who I think might be the most complete and ready to play wide receiver in the country. Manchin Sales, who physically is probably the most dominant receiver in the country at 6'5", 200 pounds. He's going to commit to Indiana on Friday. Brock Williams, who's committed to Texas, who Keenan Bailey had a remarkable relationship with, the tight end. At offensive line, I would keep Caden Moss. I would keep Jimmy Kalis. I would keep Davis Seaman. I would keep Kellen Weimer. I would add Maxwell Hillard, the offensive lineman from Pennsylvania who's committed to Florida. I would keep all three of the current defensive line commitments and add Carlos May, who may get added to the Ohio State recruiting class on Saturday. I would keep that group together. I would keep Quentin Cipher at linebacker, who Ohio State sources have said is a psychopath. And they love him. I would add Caden Henderson, the linebacker from Tampa, who's committed to Notre Dame, as opposed to Prince Goldsby. Not because I think Prince Goldsby doesn't have a higher upside, but because I think Caden Henderson is a safer bet, and because Prince Goldsby is more of a edge combo player. And I like more traditional off-ball linebackers if I'm building a class. At corner, John Meredith, the number 1 ranked player in the country, going to Texas. Gabriel Osborne going to Oklahoma. And Deontay Malone from Massillon, Washington, who's committed to Ohio State because I love his athletic upside. At safety, I'm going to keep Eli Johnson because the size is really, really intriguing at 6'3" and 215 pounds at safety. I would add Jaquan Snell, committed to Texas A&M. Zayden Gamble, another Notre Dame commit from St. Thomas Aquinas. And I would add Kanaz Sullivan, who spurned Ohio State at the last minute and picked Maryland because weird things happened and he didn't end up making his official visit to Ohio State. So 24 guys there. It's a pretty thorough class. I think I'd be winning some games.
You just simply can't win by picking Mike Loxley. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Well,
maybe by the time I said the other day that Mike Loxley will probably be fired by the time that homecoming game comes around. So
I hope so. I mean, for your sake, because I know how much you'll love that.
I would. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Thank you. I got to find a way. We've got to find a way to make sure we can get to even more of these questions because they're too good and there are too many of them to get to them all. We sincerely appreciate you.
Here we go again. Editorial contenting on the fly.
Well, let's just spitball with you, America.
Every day picked a question of the day from the mailbag and then did a more
funny you say that. There may be a solution to that in the days and weeks ahead. So stay tuned for that. There could be things in the works to get to that point. But maybe that's what we'll do. Who knows? All I know is that this week of The Beat, presented by the Waterworks, is now over. And I can't wait to get to next week and Monday and a Born Blitz and Tuesday, a Talkin' Tuesday, and get within a week of a trip to the Windy City for Lollapalooza and maybe Big Ten Media Days at the
Columbus
same time.
is kind of the Wendy's city when you think about it. That's pretty funny.
That's pretty good. It's Dublin, but I'll allow it. Whatever. He's Birm. I'm Austin. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you on Monday.